we'd like to start at the beginning, as we usually do. Where were you born? What day?
I was born November 20th, 1935, at our old house in Ballyneal, Ballingarry, County Limerick.
And could you spell Ballyneal, please?
Ballyllyneale.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah.
Okay, and then were you born at home or in the?
I was born at home.
Born at home. Okay, and where did you come in the order?
I'm number 13.
Number 13 of
14.
Of 14.
Yeah.
And of those, now you said 8 survive.
Right, yeah.
Yeah. And you spent your childhood in the family home.
Yes.
Yeah. And you went to, what kind of school did you?
I went to the national school until I was 14.
Uh-huh.
And then I went to a secondary school in Rathkeale, which is about 7 Irish miles from our house.
I see.
I went to school there for 2 years.
Yeah.
What happened was when I was 9,
Yeah.
I got an infection in my right arm.
Uh-huh.
I'm told now it was probably tuberculosis.
I see.
That didn't delay me in school, but later I did get tuberculosis in my right knee. And I was in a cast for 3 years. The cast was changed every 3 or 4 weeks.
I see.
And but they never sent me back to school while I was in the cast, you know. I wanted to tell you something initial to that. When I got the knee problem, to give you an idea, one thing that we used to go on in Ireland at the time, my knee got stiff and swollen, and they took me to a bone setter. There were bone setters there. They weren't licensed doctors or anything. And the knee is like rigid. And they put me on a table, and 3 or 4 or 5 men held me down while the doctor took my leg and bent my knee forcibly. And for good measure, he did it twice. Pain, of course, I couldn't describe.
How old were you at this time?
I was 13, yeah. So then that held me back in school. They didn't send me to school. So when I went into school, I was way bigger than the other kids in my class.
Yeah.
And I was there for 2 years, and I said to my father, I really don't want to go anymore.
Yeah.
So he said to me, well, you always said you wanted to travel.
Yeah.
And I said, yes. He said, there's a school in Limerick that teaches radio telegraphy. And you can go on the ships. I said, that's great. So that's what I did. But they only taught Morse code. From there I went to London, and I went to the British School of Telegraphy. And there I got licensed in 1955.
Were you in London when your sister Kay was in London?
Yes, I was. My sister Kay was there. My sister Lally, her real name was Alice, and twin sisters Bernadette and Teresa. And Kay and Bernadette and Teresa were nurses. Lally had different kind of jobs. I forget what she did. So there was a welcoming committee there for me, and they were all treated me like a baby, you know. The big sisters. Did my laundry, everything, cooked dinner every weekend, you know, that kind of thing. Yeah. So I got licensed. I can tell you more about that period if you like. Want me to go in more in depth?
Yeah, please.
There were about half a dozen Irish guys in my class, and they were all good. Yeah, they were all good. Out of 120, the 6 of the top placers, 6 out of 7 were Irish. You know, and you had a lot of college grads from all over the world there, Greece and Turkey and Italy, England, of course, and Ireland and Scotland. So the Irish were doing very well, but it was a great time, fun time, and we roomed. I went to a rooming house. Mrs. Can't remember her name, but she was really cheap with the food with the Irish guys. You know, it really cut us back. She would put a plate of Brussels sprouts in front of us, and they were all yellow. And she'd say, "Eat up your greens now."
They were yellow.
They were far from green. And you notice the English kid over there was getting green Brussels sprouts.
Oh, jeez. Yeah.
So I looked for another place and told her that I was moving. She said, you can't move. I need the money. And I said, well, I'm moving. Everybody moves after giving notice. And she locked all the doors. I wouldn't let me out that particular night.
She wouldn't let you out.
So I called a friend of mine. Yeah. And the windows would only open about that much. Yeah. About that much, because for burglary and so on, they were dead stopped. So I called a friend of mine, Tom Freeman from Thurles, and he came over and he helped me out. I slid out
the window.
Through the window.
Yeah.
Put my suitcase out first.
Yeah.
And ripped all the buttons off my brand new overcoat. Yeah. So I got a job. We all got part-time jobs. I worked at a furniture store as a porter. And later on, I went home on vacation, on holiday, and when I came back, I had to look for another job. I got a job at another furniture store. So by this time I was more useful to the people in the store, but they really didn't like me much. They were huffy, and it was a...
They didn't much like Irish people, maybe.
Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah. The manager was okay, but some of the women in the office, they were very huffy. Yeah. But one Christmas, or the Christmas I was there, I was bored stiff. The business was very bad. The store didn't have hire purchase, so all the people were running to the stores that had, credit. And so I built a log cabin in the front window of rugs, and I got some fluffy stuff for snow. And it so happened that the board of directors were meeting at that store shortly afterwards. They used to meet upstairs. And the chairman saw my log cabin, wanted to know who it was. And of course they told him, the bloody Irishman, or something like that. And so he called me out and talked to me. And he gave me a job in charge of 15 men installing carpet. And I didn't know anything about installing carpet. We didn't even have carpet where I grew up, And so it turned out the first day on the job was all office buildings and big showrooms, like for Caterpillar tractors, that type of huge jobs. Yeah. And I had 15 men, as I said. The first day, the first guy grabbed me by the shirt and put me up against the wall. And he said, "Look here, Pat, you leave us alone, we'll leave you alone." So it turned out, for 3 months, I walked the streets of London. I saw every historic place, every museum. I couldn't tell you how often I was in the Tate Museum. I loved that museum. And the Old Bailey. I was at the cupola on top of St. Paul's. I don't know how many times, just out of boredom, and climb up the ladder. The last 100 feet or so is just like Rongsley, or it was then. And so I forget what happened after that. Maybe I graduated from school, I'm not sure now. But he was a wonderful man. Where in Ireland and England, where there was a lot of class distinction, he was quite an exception.
Who was this?
I can't remember his name. Yeah. But he was an important man. He was a friend of an advisor to the Queen. And I saw him when he went to visit the Queen, and he had this tall top hat, immaculately dressed. He was a big man with a ruddy complexion. But just very humble man in a way, and he used to talk to me quite a bit. And he told me that, he said, my son is a wealthy man already, and he doesn't want these shops to get 11 furniture stores. He asked me if I'd be interested in taking them over eventually. And I said, no, I wanted to go to sea. And he offered to send me to university.
My God.
Really amazing.
And he was the chairman of the company.
Of the company, yeah. I mean, admittedly, it wasn't a big company.
Yeah, but still.
And then, funny enough, I was at a party in San Francisco years later, and I ran into a guy from England, and we started talking about London. I told him about Mr. It may come to me, and he said, "Oh, my mother knows him, and he's coming to visit San Francisco. He's on a world cruise." And sure enough, I met him here in San Francisco, and I borrowed a friend of mine's convertible, big convertible in those days. And I gave him a whirlwind tour of San Francisco and Marin County. I hit them all.
Oh, fantastic.
Very fast, I'm afraid to say. But he was, he was a man that you could really, really like, because there was no pretensions. He was a humble man and yet a very wealthy man, important man.
And he saw something in you.
I guess he did.
Yeah.
I mean, that's kind of remarkable to do that all on account of this little Christmas decoration.
Yeah. And then so did you take him up on his offer of the university?
No. I wanted to see, I love ships.
Yeah.
And that's something I didn't mention.
Yeah.
While I was with my different health problems, I read a lot. People brought me books, and I read books way over my head for the time, poetry and literature, and somehow I got a thing for the sea. And once in a while we'd go to Limerick, and these little coastal steamers would be tied up on the Shannon, and I'd ask the men if I could go on board, and I just loved it. And I loved the smell of diesel, and they were dirty old tubs, but I loved it. It was thrilling. I'd see a picture of a ship, oh my God, it was great. And so so I thanked him, I'm sure, and said that I wanted to go to sea. So I don't know what comes next. Well, London, we had a wonderful time. I got introduced to classical music. First of all, with my sister Lally. She was, everybody knew her at the Albert Hall. She was such a regular there, Yeah. And I saw Beniamino Gigli. He was a great Italian tenor at that time, and he was making his final tour of the world and his final concert in London. And I bought 2 tickets, one for her, one for myself. And it was everything I had, just a few rows from the front. And it was an amazing experience. He had a program of, I think, 22 songs. And he sang about 5 encores for each song.
Oh, fantastic.
The man was 60 years old.
Oh, fantastic.
And the audience was insane.
Yeah.
Just, you couldn't describe it any other way. The screaming.
Yeah.
It was just a wonderful experience.
Yeah.
And then there was a guy I roomed with from Tralee, County Kerry, Joe Williams, and he worked in the street, in the trenches. They were doing a lot of that stuff in London. He was what they called a navvy, I guess. And he used to take me to concerts at the what's the other one near the Hungerford Bridge? I can't think of it. Anyway, it was opened a few years before that. And he used to take me, and it was a riot, because he'd come straight from work with the end of his pants full of mud and his shoes and everything.
And he was a fellow from a small village in Ireland.
Yeah.
Who loved this music like you.
Oh, did he love it? More than I did, and much more knowledgeable. Because during the music, they're playing this music, and he'd lean over and whisper loudly, "You're in the woods now, Joe. Listen, there's a slight breeze. And there's a bird just making a little noise over there." It was amazing. That's how well he knew music. So that was another great experience.
Then you had an uncle, I understand, in Hollister, out in California.
Yeah.
Did that, and how did you were not the first to come to California, to San Francisco. How did you end up out here as a landlubber?
Well, my brother Tom came out to Uncle Dennis, and he worked with him for a little while. couldn't take it.
Couldn't take it.
You know, picking walnuts and,
Yeah.
and apricots and stuff like that. So he came into the city
Yeah.
and worked as a plasterer, apprentice plasterer. And so he sponsored my sister Kay that you already spoke to, and he sponsored me. That's how I came to be here. The family's been coming here since, we think, you know, maybe 1840 or 50.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, our distant relatives are down in Gilroy, Hollister, and that other town, that big town down there.
Morgan Hill?
No, it's in the middle of the farm country. It's bigger than Morgan Hill, much bigger.
Oh, Salinas.
Salinas, yeah. So apparently my brother Tom told me that our relatives are still down there. Yeah.
But you never had to work on that farm. You went straight to San Francisco?
I went straight to San Francisco. My intention was to get in the U.S. Merchant Marine.
I see.
But I got a rude surprise. You couldn't get a radio license unless you were a citizen.
Oh.
So, you know.
I see. Yeah. So you were a fully qualified radio technician, but you couldn't get a license because
of the
you were not a
citizenship.
citizen. I see.
Yeah.
I see.
And many years later, I was tempted to go during the Vietnam War, but because the money was amazing. But I had a good thing going already, you know.
Yes.
I was.
So what trade did you end up?
Electrical.
You ended up in electrical trade.
First, I was plastering. I got John Moylan.
John got you.
Got me in that trade, and that was the way it was done.
Yeah.
You know, through connections.
Sure.
And it was tough. If you didn't have the connection, you didn't get in.
So, but you would say that when you came, people could tap into the friends and family
That's it.
who were in trades, and yours led into plastering.
Yeah.
And Moylan was from Tipperary. So.
Yeah, from here I go again, my memory.
Yeah, me too.
Anyway.
So he wasn't a friend from back there, but
No, he was a friend of my brother's.
from here.
From here.
Yeah.
Because my brother was a plasterer.
Yeah.
See. And John was in the union headquarters.
Yes.
Office.
Even at that time.
At that time, even at that time, yeah. The top guy was Moran, Frank Moran. Yeah.